All right, today we're going to talk about one of history's most misunderstood empires, the Mongols. And I promise you, there's a whole side to their story that has absolutely nothing to do with the battlefield. Let's get into it.
Seriously, just for a second, what's the first image that pops in your head when I say that word? For most of us, I'm willing to bet it's something kind of like this.
The Mongol horde. Yeah, that classic phrase, right? It just brings up this image of a relentless, thundering wave of horses just sweeping across the plains. And from there, our minds go to unstoppable conquest. You know, with the siege of massive cities, the clash of huge armies, basically an empire built on nothing but pure military power.
And ultimately, we kind of see them as a scourge from the east, this force of pure destruction that just left chaos everywhere it went. And look, the conquests, they were absolutely brutal, no question. But that's not even half the story. Because the real question, the one we don't often ask, is what happens next? I mean, how do you go from being a conqueror to a ruler? How on earth do you actually run an empire that stretches from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the heart of Europe? Well, the answer is surprisingly organized. And all that organization, it started with the law. See, far from being just chaotic warriors, the Mongols put in place a really sophisticated and strict legal system to govern all their new lands. At the very heart of it all was this thing called the Great Yassa. Now, this wasn't just some loose set of guidelines. It was a full-on, comprehensive code of law that applied to absolutely everyone, from the lowest soldier to the highest general. You could say it was the bedrock of their entire society.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at what was in this code. Okay, absolute obedience to the Khan. Yeah, you'd expect that. But look at the other stuff. A ban on theft, which, by the way, was punished by death. Absolute security of your property. And maybe the most shocking one of all, especially for the 13th century, complete religious freedom. The Yassa wasn't about forcing everyone to be Mongol. It was about creating a stable, predictable, and, believe it or not, safe society.
And all this stability had this huge economic ripple effect. By making their vast lands secure, the Mongols basically, maybe even accidentally, created what historians now call the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace. And with it, you could argue they made the world's first great free trade zone.
I mean, the difference was just night and day. Before the Mongols, the famous Silk Road was just this patchwork of little kingdoms and bandit-filled roads. It was so dangerous and incredibly slow. But under the Mongols, it became one unified, secure highway. The risk for merchants just plummeted, and for the very first time, stuff and ideas could flow freely all the way from China to Europe.
And this quote from a historian back then just says it all, doesn't it? That's not just some pretty sentence. It really gets at the incredible level of safety the Mongols enforced. And the key thing to remember is this wasn't just a happy accident. It was a deliberate policy to encourage trade, which, of course, they could then tax. Smart.
So how did they keep control over this massive area? They did it with the logistical masterpiece called the YAM system. Seriously, think of it like the Pony Express, but on an imperial scale, like on steroids. It was this huge network of relay stations, which meant official messengers could travel up to 200 miles in a single day. This thing was the empire's nervous system. It let the Khan send orders, get intelligence, and manage the whole thing with unbelievable speed.
Now, when you have this incredible flow of goods and information, something else starts to flow too. People and their ideas. You see, the Mongols weren't really interested in ideology. They were interested in one thing: talent. Their whole approach was just pure pragmatism. They really didn't care about your religion, your ethnicity, or where you came from. They only cared about one question. Were you useful? Could you contribute something to the empire? And so, under Mongol protection, you found all these different groups living and working together. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, their religions were all protected by law. The Khans went out of their way to recruit engineers, doctors, and artisans from all over their conquered lands, bringing them to the capital to share what they knew. It was basically a meritocracy built on skill, not on who your parents were. So how do we put all this together? How do you reconcile these two very different stories? On one hand, you have the brutal conqueror, and on the other, the shockingly effective administrator. This brings us right to the dual legacy of the Mongol Empire. And this table really just lays it all out, doesn't it? The Mongol paradox is that both of these identities are true. The same empire that carried out these absolutely brutal campaigns also established a strong rule of law.
The same force that was feared as a scourge also practiced a level of religious tolerance that was almost unheard of for its time. It's a history of really stark contradictions.
So, if you take away one thing from all this, it should be a totally new perspective. The Mongols were so much more than just destroyers. Yeah, they tore down a lot of old walls, but in their place, they built systems, legal systems, economic systems, logistical systems that connected the world in a way it had never, ever been connected before.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. If a so-called barbarian empire is the one creating a legal code, sparking global trade, and promoting religious tolerance, what does that say about our traditional definition of civilization? It's a question that shows just how much the story of the Mongols can still make us rethink everything we thought we knew.